Apologies for the slightly later start. We were gathering up some latecomers who were coming in through the lobby downstairs. So my name is John McAuliffe. I'm a professor of poetry here at the university, and I have a couple of jobs, and one of them is to welcome you all to the university and to welcome you to Manchester Museum. We're really, really delighted, obviously, to be back here after its reopening in this great space, and I hope after you've kind of had a very stimulating morning here, you might have a chance to walk around and take a look at some of the new and amazing exhibitions on the floors beneath us. Also, I have to wish you happy International Women's Day, and it's great to have a crowd here, and I'm also addressing the live stream crowd who are also going to be watching this this event, possibly all around the world, if I know anything about Kezra's reach with the amazing Macfest. One of my other jobs here is as Director of Creative Manchester, which is the university-wide research platform which tries to bring together interdisciplinary researchers which might look at creative practitioners alongside sociologists, alongside historians, alongside museologists, and trying to figure out how this big university's many disciplines might work together to make really interesting and impactful research. And I'm going to hand over in a minute to another one of my colleagues on the Creative Manchester team. I also have to tell you, though, that if there is a fire alarm today, it is not, what am I saying? It is not a dummy run, okay? We have been told there is no, there's nothing planned like that. So if there is, our colleagues in the blue Creative Manchester t-shirts will point you the direction to leave the building. So I'm going to hand over to Kezra in a minute, who's going to talk a little bit about Macfest, and she's going to then hand over to Jenna Ashton. Jenna is a lecturer at the Institute for Cultural Practices. She is an artist herself, and she works with some amazing community practitioners across the region. And she's also the research lead on creative and civic futures here at the university. So she's one of the people who brings together researchers in the way that we're doing on this panel today. And I know that she's going to introduce Rabia and Saskia, our main speakers. But first of all, I'm going to hand over to Kezra.
Thank you so much, John. Good morning, everyone, and assalamu alaikum. I'm Kezra, as he said, and the founder and executive director of Macfest. Macfest is currently running. We just literally celebrated our 5th anniversary on Saturday, and this is a very special day for us. As you know, it's International Women's Day, and this is our first event to kickstart the day, and we are absolutely delighted to be hosted by Creative Manchester, by the University of Manchester, supported by Centre for New Writing, with John. John has worked with us before, and he's hosted many events. And of course, I'm going to speak about Saskia, her amazing, wonderful book, Muslim Women Creatives. That's what the festival's about. At the moment, we are running the Muslim Women's Art Festival. Macfest is themed. We have Youth Festival running at the same time, Women Festival in March. Then April, we have Ramadan and Eid Festival in May, and then International Festival. So we are right bang in the middle of Muslim Women's Art Festival. So first, this one, as I mentioned, and with Saskia and with Jenna and Rabia. Rabia is your creative Muslim artist today, and she's fantastic. We hosted her before, and you will love listening to her. Later this afternoon, if you're able to click onto your link, we've got an amazing event all the way from Kuwait with Kuwaiti journalists sitting there, with Elena, who's sitting in Italy, talking about what is it like for Kuwaiti creatives. Then later in the evening, please join us for a very, very special event. It says 3 centuries of writing by Muslim women travelers. Think 3 centuries. Travelers, Muslim women across the world. And that's at 6 p.m. All are free. And it's with Siobhan Lambert-Hurley from the University of Sheffield. So I want to first of all thank you so much to Anne-Marie and her amazing team for hosting us, for organizing this event with us, and of course, providing the marvelous buffet hospitality. Please don't disappear. Enjoy. And we've got a cake as well for you. Thank you to John again for his support each year in hosting our literary event. He hosted a few years back, one in Blackwell's bookshop, and with 3 Muslim poets. Then he hosted another one at the Central Library with more Muslim poets, and then he hosted a special event, Black Lives Matter literary panel. So John is very much part of Macfest, mashallah. So I want to thank you to our speakers, Dr. Saskia and her fantastic book, as I mentioned, she will talk about, Dr. Jenna Ashton, who's joining us for the first time for Macfest in hosting the event, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, Rabia, a filmmaker, sharing her journey into the world of filmmaking. And thank you to Russ. He joins us again for interpreting for Rabia. Welcome, Russ. So finally, thank you to you guys for celebrating this special day for us. And we will celebrate this day, and the theme, as you can see, embrace equity. We will have, if you want to join us, a group photograph in the embrace pose at the end, and also we've got a Macfest banner. That is if you wish to have one. And we have a special cake, 8th of March, International Women's Day cake at the back. So if you want to take a picture of the cake later, you can, or have a picture with it, please do. So thank you, everyone, and enjoy your time. Now, I'm handing you back to lovely Dr. Jenna Ashton, mashallah.
Thank you so much. So welcome everybody in the room and to those of you online. Thank you for spending this morning with us. So today's event then for International Women's Day 2023, for me, somewhat sits in the shadow of unfortunate, hateful and diabolical anti-migrant and anti-asylum sentiments being expressed by our government and politicians over the past few days. The illegal migration bill has been brought to the House by a Home Secretary who is a woman. So why does this matter? Well, it reminds us of 2 things. First, that not all women are feminists. And 2, that when we discuss gender oppression, we must pay attention to how this oppression and violence plays out in the intersections with ethnicity, race, ability, sexuality, and class. And the focus of our event this morning on creative industries and arts are far from free of these issues. But also it's within creativity and arts where people can find freedom to express the stories, the voices, experiences of marginalisation and oppression, but also brilliant activism and justice. And our 2 speakers today are excellently placed to help us work through some of these issues this morning. So with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker who will present for 15 minutes, Dr. Saskia Warren. So Dr. Saskia Warren is a senior lecturer in human geography at the University of Manchester. And from 2017 to 2020, she held an Arts and Humanities Research Council Leadership Fellowship, Geographies of Muslim Women Artists in the UK, a Cultural and Creative Economy. That was the focus of the fellowship. She recently co-curated the Contemporary Art and Textile exhibition Beyond Faith, Muslim Women Artists Today at the Whitworth, 2019 to 2020. And her research interests are inequalities, religion, gender and ethnicity, cultural production and consumption, curating and co-production. Her interdisciplinary work has been widely published in leading peer-reviewed journals, and she is the editor with Phil Jones of the collective Creative Economies, Creative Communities, Rethinking Place, Policy and Practice with Routledge. Currently, alongside her post at the University of Manchester, Saskia holds a parliamentary academic fellowship with the Heritage Collections team at UK Parliament. So with that, I'll hand over to Saskia. Thank you.
Many thanks for the warm and the generous introduction. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with Macfest at the Manchester Museum on International Women's Day. My book is really about very brilliant women in the culture and creative industries. So Manchester Museum, which is directed by the very brilliant Esme Ward, is a fitting venue. In my book, which was kindly introduced by Jenna, I explore the viewpoints and labour experiences of British Muslim women. It was important to write the book because there's a tension. On the one hand, government, NGOs, and often media have focused on the missing Muslims from economic and public life, especially Muslim women. On the other hand, there are reports and glossy editorials on the huge growth of the global Islamic creative industries and the centrality of Muslim female leadership therein, especially in digital and fashion. So, are Muslim women working in the cultural and creative industries excluded or bossing it? In this research, I want to get behind the somewhat uneven statistics and to reconsider simplistic binaries of huge financial success or failure to better understand the roles and contributions of British Muslim women in their situated complexity. While the journeys of those profiled in the research was not straightforward in many cases, where women often face challenges at many levels, the intention of the work was unabashedly positive. I wanted to share important and often overlooked work by Muslim women to culture and society, and to use the platform that I have in order to enhance visibility where that was wanted. The prioritisation of faith and gender in narratives of identity formation is a significant feature of a growing community of artists and producers, Muslim women who primarily market their work for other Muslim women. This finding is supported by social evidence following geopolitical events and reprisals post 9/11, where adoption of the term Muslim women, especially by younger generations, has grown in an act of supranational identification with the Muslim female community, or Muslima, that crosses race, ethnicity, sex, and class. The formation of intra-Muslim space of female solidarity and unity is reflective of the wider foregrounding of religion in the construction of personal identity by ethnic minorities. This has been understood as a response to unfair treatment, stigmatization, and higher levels of social and economic exclusion, most acutely experienced by Muslims. Religious intolerance is real. The Wolf Institute, in their 2020 report, How We Get Along, found intolerance towards faith is stronger than intolerance towards nationality or ethnicity, and especially marked towards Muslims. Religion is a protected characteristic under the Equality Act of 2010. However, it's largely missing from social surveying. In the census, the question's voluntary only, albeit with a high number answering. And strikingly, Arts Council England, in partnership with the Arts Consultancy Concilium, undertook a review of equality and diversity, where they found almost no publications that look at religion and faith in arts and culture. Considering the paucity of research, ACE inferred that religion was treated differently to other protected characteristics, either by being seen as too private or as additional data somehow for organisations. Religion might be, I quote, trickier to pin down. In both the initial report and follow-up, it's written that given the lack of evidence, there's poor understanding of religion as an index of inclusion in culture and the arts. Wider research by the Equality and Human Rights Commission states that only a minority of UK-based surveys in any area have asked questions which might contribute to an understanding of religious discrimination, and many fewer ask about religious discrimination directly. Clearly, there is work to be done. I am a white, non-religious woman who came to an interest in the relationship between gender, Islam, and creative expression almost by chance. Following my PhD, I was employed on a postdoctoral project in Birmingham, researching cultural intermediation, and by that I mean brokerage, really, between cultural organisations and supposed hard-to-reach communities. One strand looked at Muslim women's audience participation, which sparked my interest in the roles and agencies of Muslim women as creative producers and artists in their own right. This turned on the head the idea of who exactly is hard to reach. The research in the book, and this is the image of the book, was generously supported by a UKRI grant and comprised 3 years of dedicated fieldwork. There are 120 participants in total, with some appearing in multiple stages of the research process. Significantly, the book gives emphasis to the plurality of Muslim female experience in Britain. Women in the study mostly identified as British Muslim, with heritage reported from the South Asian diaspora, but also included minority Muslims, those who identified variously as Scottish, Caribbean, Palestinian, Iranian, Egyptian, Burundian, of mixed heritage and more. Notably, there was also a rescaling of identity away from nationhood to focus on the global, the Ummah, or the scale of the city, such as Mancunian, or even at a micro level, an area of the city. I'm a Chorltonite, one interviewee stated proudly. Sometimes this rescaling was due to self-awareness of familial migration histories and continued connectivities with other countries and places, or at other times, a sense of outsiderness or in-betweenness. Creed was identified variously as Sunni, Shia, and Sufi, or in some cases, participants decentered piety, considering themselves culturally Muslim but non-observant. Ages were between 1865. The wider funded project involved action-based research. I co-curated the exhibition Beyond Faith at the Whitworth Art Gallery, together with 5 brilliant artists drawn from earlier stages of the research process. Fatima Fargasam, Usharay Gul, Shabana Beg, Ada Foratan, and Rabina Akhtar Allah. The exhibition and impact-related activities were assisted by 2 wonderful research assistants, Jana Wendler and Sarah Hassan. I will now briefly set out the scope of the book by chapter, which will give an overview. British Muslim Women in the Culture and Creative Industries frames contemporary Muslim women's labour practices and experiences within a longer history of empire and post-colonial legacies. I discuss changes to gender and labour practices across the 20th and 21st centuries, but also historical continuities of racism, patriarchalism, and complexity around British and British Muslim relationships, from the Venerable Bede's treasure box, which included pepper and incense emanating from the Arab Middle East, to encouraging Muslim labour migration in the early 1960s, to anti-Muslim imagery in the Brexit referendum. It includes discussion of cultural policy in relationship to the now fraught notion of diversity, often derided as diversity speak, and reflects on how educational experiences from school to tertiary level impact upon women in their negotiation of a sense of place in the art world. The Higher Education Statistics Agency, HESA, recalled that creative arts and design has the highest proportion of white students than any other discipline area, about 82% in 2018-2019, and just 2% identified as Asian. So the art students in the study can be regarded as trailblazers. There are 3 chapters that consider in depth the experience of women in digital and media, fashion and textile, and visual arts. Mainstream media in Britain has a so-called chill factor due to anti-Muslim associations post 9/11 and 7/7 with hostility, Islamophobia, and racism, leading to avoidance. The rise of Muslim lifestyle magazines and Muslima digital platforms, including Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, has grown the visibility of Muslim women in the public debate on everyday lived Islam, women's rights, and belonging in secular and religious societies. In fashion, despite high-profile designers, including Hannah Tajima, Diane Pelenge, or fashion influencers, Haida Katan and Dina Torkia, women often perform less visible roles in tailoring and teaching, or own micro-businesses, which allows for home working and more shielding from potential racism, patriarchalism, or other discrimination from employers in fashion. However, this comes at a price. Owning a label conveys status, but it's typically poorly paid. Meanwhile, in the visual arts, Muslim and minority ethnic artists are historically underrepresented in art collections, the art market, and Western art canon. In the UK, the marginalisation of religion within art discourse has led to a narrowing of notions of modernity, unchecked barriers to the art establishment, and perpetuated a notion of authenticity for minority artists and their artwork that can be limiting. In the UK and wider afield, there remains concerns over the burden of representation post 9/11 and erasure or relegation of artists by leading institutions and funders if they choose to represent as Muslims or religious or situate their work within religious art. Visual artists, therefore, report strategies for negotiating access to funding, prizes, and exhibitioning, with many using identity markers flexibly across the career life course. And finally, the book discusses the concept of Muslim creative activism. By Muslim creative activism, I refer to visual arts, fashion, writing, festivals, and other cultural forms that advance knowledge of difference and resist discrimination in relationship to a wider public. Clear intersections exist between creative and civic spheres, where Muslim women creatives in many cases are active charity and development campaigners. Quieter and more spectacular kinds of Muslim creative activism offers opportunities for building alliances and solidarity and for living a good life. Islamic-informed ideals of dawah, education, and sadaqah, charity, for pious Muslims can bring new meaning to cultural labour. So here I explore the fusion of creativity and civic goals with Muslimness as a means of spreading awareness, contemplation and worship, and also as a political response to particular psychosocial demands felt by some Muslim artists. For example, does the audience think I'm an extremist if I speak about my faith? So now I'll read a short book extract, and I chose this because it focuses on a key theme of the work, and that's representation. The artist that I cite when I read from this extract is the very same artist who painted the portrait that's on the front of the book. This issue of representation is discussed by several people. For instance, artist Azra observes, "We're all perceived as kind of a homogenous group. When you all have individual identities, individual strands of identities, you all kind of originate from different parts of the world, definitely. So this self-portrait is just a glimpse into who I am as a person." Azra talks about a self-portrait painted during her time at art school, Chelsea College of Arts, which is a large oil painting representing herself, a young Muslim woman in everyday wear sitting on a throne. In the painting, she wears a black abaya, gold hoop, Adidas tracksuit bottoms, and colourful trainers. Exploring questions of youthful self-identity and Muslim representation guided her at this early junction of her career because, and I quote, "I think especially in our kind of political and economic climate, it's very important, especially with the Brexit thing right now, to be able to represent, to self-represent in a society where bodies of South Asian and Muslim women are just pawns in political discourse. You know, just to be able to say, like, this is who I am, and you don't get to kind of paint me with your brush." The artist refers to the geopolitical significance and symbolism of the Muslim women in British and wider Euro-American political discourse around migration and the integration of social difference. Here, Azra partly alludes to female agency over self-representation, which is significant in art history, given the preponderance of male artists and female subjects. To paint herself with her own brush offers a rebuttal to the masculine gaze of the painter, if not to the viewer, and to the orientalizing way that Muslim women as subjects have typically been represented in Western art, such as the reclining figure of the odalisque. As Azra notes, the pose in the throne is most closely associated with monarchs, especially with kings. At the graduation show, the culmination of the art degree, her work was hung on the front of the art school. You can see that here, the banner covering the front of Chelsea School of Art. The prominence of display of Azra's painting received mixed responses from her peers. It was an opportunity she sought and advocated for. For some, it appeared she had been privileged due to her minority background, yet for others, it was fair given the historic marginalisation and silencing of minority artists and Muslim women. As Azra said, the painting and its placement says, "Look, here I am." Okay. And just a little plug here. So if you would like to read more and to find out more about the book, then you can purchase a copy, and I think that this discount code is still live, so it's worth a try, and that's code NEW30. Okay, thank you all very much.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Can I just pinch back my... Amazing work, thank you, Saskia. And Saskia will be joining us for the discussion in a moment. But first of all, to hand over to Rabia Hussain, who is a filmmaker and documentary producer from the UK. As a deaf creative, she makes films that highlights issues such as mental health, disability and inclusivity, as well as emphasising the importance of activism and destigmatising in general. One of her greatest and most successful documentaries is Two Deaf Travellers, which has been ranked as the best independent travel video 2021 by the International Council of Tourism Film Festival. Over to Rabia, thank you.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here, especially on this wonderful day, International Women's Day. And it's good to see lots of women in the audience. So my name is Rabia, as you can see. I'm deaf myself. I'm a freelance filmmaker and documentary producer. And I've worked over the last 10 years. It's flown by, that 10 years has flown by. I want to show you a short video clip before I talk about my upbringing and how I got here today. Okay, so if we could show the clip, thank you. So I had many roles with that production. I was a camera operator, director, producer. My main role was a documentary producer and camera woman. I was born deaf. I lived in a silent world, not heard anything. So I saw the world just through my eyes. So I approach everything visually. That's how I gain my information and my inspiration and how I delve into other people's worlds. And I used to ask the question when I was a lot younger, how there was no representation of, or I used to watch programs on TV and think, how could I be part of that world? And I realized over time that I could actually do it. I just felt I just needed the space to be able to do it and to engage with that industry. And I felt that was going to be my career path. So that's what I did. I studied at college, I went on to university, gained my degree. But it has been a challenge. There have been barriers along the way. One is I'm deaf, I'm Asian, I'm a woman. And it can be quite overwhelming having that intersectionality. There weren't any role models out there for me to look up to. I didn't see any other deaf women in that industry. And people of my ethnicity, there were very few of them represented within that as well. Or they weren't being exposed anyway. I couldn't see them there. They're very rare. If they were there, they weren't really celebrated. So they were, and that was back many years ago. So there's very, very little representation, which to me was extremely disappointing. But I didn't let that stop me. I thought, I need to do something here. I need to break these stereotypes. I need to break the glass ceiling, as they call it, and show that being in the industry, as a creative, as a deaf woman with my ethnicity, that we can do it. I was lucky enough to be given my first job, which I really, really enjoyed. I thought, finally, I've got my foot on the ladder. But that brought problems. So I was appointed, and another woman who was deaf was appointed, so we were sharing the role, but she was white. We worked very well together, but I felt I was being treated differently. And I think it was colour privilege. I really do. I just felt I was treated unfairly. I felt like I was overburdened with the amount of work. I didn't feel I was being looked after mentally by the employer. Whereas this other person, who had been appointed in the same role as me, was treated differently. I felt I was being looked down on. But I was very lucky because she was very supportive. She could see how I was being treated. I think it's probably because we were both deaf. But I don't think she could empathise in terms of my ethnicity or my life experiences. She could empathise with being a woman. But we both agreed that something needed to change. And I stood up. And she actually supported me in standing up. We went together and we challenged the status quo. And I think by having that ally with me, I felt more empowered. I felt this individual, this other woman, just gave me the right to make the challenges that needed to happen. And it was a difficult thing because we were in the same role, but they were being treated with better treatment, I suppose. But I didn't hold that against her. It was the people above who were making the decisions. It wasn't her who was making the decisions. She was just acting in the way she thought she should be acting. But she supported me to challenge what was going on. But what I've done over time, I've been able to step back from these situations and think, actually, this can be quite empowering. It's an opportunity for me to learn from how I've been treated and think to myself, well, I'm not going to be treated like that again. And sometimes you have to go through the suffering. And it's important to go through the suffering because other people, other women will see you doing that and they will be inspired by it. And I'm very proud to say that I've been in this industry for over 10 years. I've got to a very, very good point in my career. I look back on it and I feel quite emotional sometimes. I didn't expect to be where I am. I want to say thank you to all the women in the room for being here, and I feel supported. I've got some really, really good friends. They're in the room today as well. They're of the same background as me. They know the suffering I've been through, but sharing those opportunities, sharing those stories with them, and I feel, we have my friends with me today. We have a teacher, one is working within the mental health industry, and I'm sure there's other people in this room who are achieving in the careers that they want to achieve. And it's important for us to keep moving forward. We're here for the next generation. We will become those role models that were not there for us. I'm here to inspire you, to motivate you, to break down the barriers and, lead the way. It's important for us as women to get through this. I work freelance, so I work for different companies, ITV. I work internationally as well, so I'm on documentaries. So I do travel the world. And there are many, many challenges because I'm trying to expose people to the deaf story. And by being a deaf woman, I feel that's important to share that with people. Giving the deaf community a voice in the world, and so people can witness their stories and engage with their life. And that's important for me because that's part of engagement. And I'm hopefully, the pain I've been through and the suffering I've been through is something of the past. By making a documentary, I made one in Kenya, and it went forward for an award at Cannes, and we won. And I just say to myself, if I can do it, you can do it. Small steps, you're not going to achieve it overnight. We get there. So like I say, I won this award in Cannes. What's next? Oh, yes, what's next? So the two deaf travellers, it was mentioned at the beginning, that's one of the biggest achievements and one of the pieces of work I'm most proud of, really. It was an international film festival, and it wasn't a deaf film festival, it was international, so lots of different languages spoken or signed. And when they said the two deaf travellers had won, we didn't believe it. We couldn't believe it. It messed with our heads. It really did. I said, please pinch me. Am I really seeing this? And the colleague I was with, they were like, no, they have actually just said, we have won. We were amazed. Our jaws were on the floor. We were absolutely gobsmacked. Because, again, a deaf woman from an ethnic minority winning international award is an amazing opportunity, not just for me, but for a lot of other people. And I'm going to continue. I'm going to continue making, being creative and working within the art field and making more documentaries. We still don't have enough representation within that industry, so there's still work to be done. We need to work together as a collective and break through and support each other to get there. Thank you.
Is that on? Is that on? 1, 2, 3? Yep. Amazing. Thank you so much, Rabia. Really inspirational and, moving. So I'd now like to invite Saskia and Rabia to join me at the front for a discussion and Q&A. I'm going to take chair's prerogative and have a couple of questions first, and then we'll throw it open to the floor. So, please join me, Saskia and Rabia.
If I sit here. Thank you.
Okay, fabulous. So, really we need 2 hours now, but we have about 15 minutes. So let's do this. So first of all, then, I've got a couple of questions for Rabia. And the first one is, what drew you to filmmaking, very specifically as an art form? Are you able to share your thoughts with that?
I think it's such a powerful medium to work in. For me, it's a safer space. I think it gives people the opportunity to tell their story, to have a voice. I feel I can engage with them emotionally when I'm making the pieces. And I think, hopefully, when the audience see it, they can see the person inside, not just what they see on the screen. I think it's a very powerful medium to work in.
Amazing, yeah. So when did you first pick up a camera then, an actual film camera?
I was about 15, I think. I'll be honest with you. I made a short film and I reflect on it now and I laugh at it. It's so bad. But it's the first step, isn't it? It's the first step of becoming a filmmaker. I just remember picking one up and I just felt enthused and excited and just the opportunity and you know and just experimenting. It was just the best.
Awesome. So my next question, which is a bit more of a challenge, I suppose, is so you've shared your experience with us of the challenges, you know, working as a deaf Muslim female artist. So from your perspective, what needs to happen for the arts and creative industries to be more inclusive and accessible?
I think showing different cultures, I think being more diverse within the industry is important. In terms of representation, there aren't enough women in there. We're not being exposed to seeing those women as well. So I think there needs to be a positive change. I think people are marginalised. I think people are, I don't know if it's to do with, I don't know, unconscious bias, prejudice, I don't know. People are not being given those opportunities yet. That needs to change. I think opportunities need to be given to people. Give people the opportunity to show their skills. Because what people are making decisions on what they're seeing, not on what the person can do. You know, everybody has an element of creativity in them. And I think people just need to be given those opportunities. So it's down to equality, really. You know, if I look at myself as a deaf woman, you know, I'm representing the deaf community. That's usually what I do within my work. And there's not enough opportunities for deaf people in the creative industries. There is lots and lots of hearing privilege, as we like to call it. There's deaf privilege as well within the deaf community. People of that culture, they take privilege from it. But it's about us. So, for example, if you're in at the moment, I'm an assistant producer on a series. I'm a woman. We're filming women. And my other assistant producer, she is a woman as well. She's hearing. And I've explained to her about the barriers that I've faced through my career in terms of getting experience, being offered those opportunities. So when I say to people I'm deaf, they always go, oh, how are you going to communicate? How are you going to fit in? How's the team going to work? So, you know, we have communication. There's a barrier for everybody, but there's also a solution. We can remove those barriers if people are willing to take those opportunities. Because otherwise I'm being discriminated against. And I've told people this, that I am being discriminated against because they come up with barriers rather than with solutions. All I need to do is be treated fairly, that's all. So my hearing series producer, who I work with very closely, is so supportive. She's a woman. I think she gets the deaf perspective because we've worked together quite a lot. And we work very, very well together as women.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And I think that sharing of specific examples and cases is really important, isn't it, in terms of what are the specific barriers, how do people come together to transform a system and then move into a different place, which kind of connects me then to Saskia's work, because I was really struck by the statistics you brought up about art school, which is sort of one of the first points of access maybe for people. So within your research then, you know, what are you kind of hoping your research can do to support Muslim women artists on that journey through the creative industries?
Thank you. So specifically looking at Muslim women artists, what I can do is use the tools at my disposal to try and create a bigger platform and visibility. And so things I can do is try and win grants and organise exhibitions, but also many of the artists want to change the art canon, and indeed are ambitious and want to enter the art canon. That is, want to enter the story of art. So what I can do is I can write about these women artists as serious artists, which they are. And so in that regard, not just organising and co-curating exhibitions, but also publishing work. And hopefully in that way, it starts to document the contributions of Muslim women artists as serious contemporary artists. But also to open up a conversation and dialogue that discusses the ways in which white space operates. And what was noticeable in the study is most the women that I engaged with were quite flexible, but they did want there to be a wider set of options in order to include them. So, for instance, networking, when it takes place around alcohol or in pubs, was not conducive to feeling that they could enter the art world. So many said, it doesn't have to be the case that there's never alcohol present, but could we just have some occasions where there isn't, where I can feel comfortable? Similarly, having mentors that might come from a similar background that can support them on their journey, that came up as important. Also thinking through some of the pedagogical tenets of art history, like life drawing. It might not be suitable for everyone to do figurative life drawing and image making. Some Muslims I engaged with were comfortable with that, others weren't. So again, it's opening up a series of options and thinking about some of the lessons from decolonialising art curriculums and bringing those to fore to really change our worldview in order to kind of give a better platform to those who are non-white and also those who are religious.
Yeah, some really brilliant points there, and especially a call back to academia to look at itself and to revise and really look at the ways we do things. So what's next then for this work for you?
So what's next? So I've been working with UK Parliament on a project around equality, diversity, inclusion in relationship to the heritage collections. I need a bit of time to write that up, but watch this space. And I'm also putting together a large project, because the project that I talked about today was focused on artists that identify mostly as British Muslim, as I mentioned. But the next project will be a cross-national study looking at Muslim majority and minority contexts. And I'm hoping that a very large international touring exhibition will be involved. So again, more news in due course, and keep our fingers crossed.
Awesome, thank you. Okay. So I'm now going to open it out to the floor. We do have a roving mic, so wait until the microphone gets to you. And also remember that Russ is doing BSL as well. So who would like to ask a question? I think we have a lady here.
Thanks so much. Can you guys hear me? Yeah, cool. So I guess this question is for both the panelists. So as a South Asian oil painter and digital artist myself, I have felt the psychosocial pressures that Saskia mentioned of sort of challenging, the image of the silent Muslim woman. I think for Rabia, my question would be, how have you been able to sort of transcend that expectation in your craft? And for Saskia, how have you seen Muslim women create meaningful art for themselves? And not just for the audience or as sort of a political commentary. Because I've even noticed when I create art, that's okay, this is for myself as well. Yes. It's very, like I said, no, it has to, challenge this, has to challenge that, and I can't just create art as it is. Hope that's okay.
Great, who wants to answer that first? Rabia, do you want to have a go?
Okay, that's a good question. I like to say to people, you need to believe in yourself before you do anything. People may feel they don't fit in, but that's not a problem. As long as you feel comfortable in your own skin, in what you're producing, then you start to expose yourself that little bit more. And I think what happens then is your skill mix gets a little bit better. You start to, people start to understand that you have something to offer. And if people are offering opportunities, I think you need to, or it's better to take them. You might not feel you're fitting in. You might feel it's a little bit overwhelming. Let's just say, take the risk. Take that risk because you never know where it's going to lead. But as long as you believe in yourself and you feel safe to do it, you know your own values, so reflect on those values. And if you believe in what you can do, So you have the right skill mix for whatever. I can talk about an experience that when I worked with another colleague of mine, once I was given the opportunity, they could see what I could produce. They'd been given the same opportunity, but they didn't take the risk. So they took a back seat.
Saskia.
It's a brilliant question and observation. So thank you for that. I think it speaks to the point I made about how, for some artists, they're pushed towards more quote-unquote authenticity in their artwork by art tutors. And some want the freedom to talk about identity. So they want to be able to talk about being Muslim or migratory histories, but also don't want to be delimited by it. So why is it that someone that's white can draw or produce art about anything, but if you're a Muslim female artist, it needs to be about identity? So this is the question that was asked by these artists to themselves, but also to me and to the establishment. So I think it's exactly that. It's that freedom of creative expression. You can represent your religion without feeling worried that you'll be marginalised in the art world and won't be treated as serious. You'll be relegated to a community artist rather than an international artist, but that you don't have to either.
Yeah, great, thank you, and good luck with your work as well. So, any other questions from the floor? Yeah? thinking. Yes, thanks, Kaiser.
Rabia, what are you working on next in terms of your filmmaking project?
I'm going to be entirely honest with you. I've got dreams. I'll talk about them. I want to become a wildlife producer and filmmaker. That's my dream. But it's unfortunate. It is difficult. Like I've already said, where are the role models? Where's the guides? The path is very, very long, I would say. It's a very, very big dream of mine, and as we know, at the moment I'm a little bit lost in terms of the wildlife work. I need to find somewhere in terms of getting my foot on the rung of that ladder. I will get there, I will build up my career in that. So I'm doing some documentary work at the moment, and I'm hoping the path I'm on at the moment will take a little fork in the road and it'll take me down the other route, so I'm hoping to achieve. I have a passion and I enjoy every day that I'm living, and I want to travel the world more. I want to expose more deaf people's stories to the world. It can be about their religion, it can be their ethnicity or whatever. It's about their identity and how they see themselves, and that's my passion. I think that needs to happen a little bit more.
Oh, I'm all excited now. I really want to chat to you afterwards now about wildlife. Any particular sorry, we're going to go off on a tangent now. Any particular wildlife?
I do like anything that's underwater.
Oh,
so
okay.
Sea life.
I'm doing some stuff on beavers at the moment. Anyway, we'll have this conversation offline, out the room. The floor. Any more questions? We still have time. Excellent. Yes. Fab.
Yes. Have you got any tips for the next generation of women in terms of getting into the creative industries?
Fab question. Go on, Rabia. Rabia's going to think on that one. Saskia, tips.
Yes, I think I need to consider this too. So what I've noticed, there's a big discussion about whether or not it's useful to have specific funding pots that are made available for those from diverse backgrounds, whatever those different variables might be around identity. What I've found is often those that are earlier on in their career find it very helpful. It's a foot on the ladder. So perhaps to look for different funding pots which would help to launch you either as a Muslim, or it might be pots deliberately designed for those that are from female backgrounds or minority ethnic backgrounds. There is less of this funding available now, as Raabia has pointed towards, but it's worth looking on Arts Council England's website and just generally having a Google and seeing what is around. I think arts organisations in Manchester often do youth-orientated projects, sometimes with small funding pots available. So again, it's worth looking at what youth programmes are there, and that can be a really helpful foot on the ladder and will help to demystify institutions. So it can be a good way to meet and to network with people. There's also a really brilliant organisation, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which is Muslim Women Connect. They haven't done much work around the cultural and creative industries specifically, but the aim of the organisation is to create mentoring for Muslim women in specific industries where it's seen that there's a lack of representation historically. So a multi-pronged approach, I think, is always best.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, again, learning from a range of different stories of people in the arts and their different ways of raising money, paying the bills, you know, and still being able to do their practice at the same time and learning from those different ways. Yeah. Any other thoughts from you, Rabia, on that in terms of tips from your experience?
I think my advice is take every opportunity, put yourself out there, volunteer. That makes your CV stand out. There are opportunities with BFI, British Film Institute. You can always approach them. NFTS, National Film and Television School. They have regular courses that for young people to inspire them, and they are keen on diversity, disability included in that diversity. I know when I was about 19, I think I did one of their first courses, and then from that, my CV, it just seemed to resonate with people, and I was approached by a lot of organisations because I'd done that course. And that's then, once you've done a few courses, you get a chance to network. Network is extremely powerful. Meeting with different people from the industry. You might work for them. You need them, but they need you just as much. Believe in yourself, you know, and if there's a project coming along, they might remember you.
Yeah. Brilliant, thank you. I think we've got, time for one more question. Great.
Thank you. It's very illuminating. Following on from that very interesting information of your first course, as a former teacher, especially here in Manchester, it begs the question really, I think, please. Was there anything, forgive me, was there anything in your schooling that both restricted and yet nurtured your talents at the same time? And what advice, obviously briefly, would you give curriculum makers?
Excellent question.
Can I tie in with that?
Because it's very restricted, I think you'll find, generally.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, pass the mic to Kezra.
Yes, I'm being greedy here, but I really wanted to. Many years ago, I went on a deaf awareness course, and by doing the course, I realized I was mortified, all the things we were doing wrong. For example, having our back to the deaf people. So what I want Rabia to share is how can we support them better in communication, give us some tip, raise our awareness. So unwittingly, we do discriminate without realizing.
Yeah, definitely. So two interconnected but sort of separate questions. But I do, yeah. Let's have a look at this thing briefly then about secondary and school education. Yeah, and curriculum education. Yeah, 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 yeah. Early years. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thoughts, Rabia.
That is a really, really good question, and not an easy one to answer. I went to a mainstream school, but within that school I had a deaf unit. I think I was very lucky. They did a film project, which I was part of, and that inspired me. I think that was the catalyst for my career. I don't think in terms of motivation or encouragement. I think there's lack of guidance within the structures. So they say to you, so they said to me, Rabia, what do you want to do? I'm going, well, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what's on offer. Give me some choices, because if I make the wrong choice, I can redirect my career. If I don't have a choice to start with, I don't even know where to start my career. And it's about engaging with people that you trust and to make better choices. Let's call them better choices. So I needed that advice to do that. But back then, I didn't have that advice, so I didn't know what steps to take. They would say, oh, why don't you, the teacher used to say, oh, right, why don't you go and do a college course in art? And I'd go, why are you asking me that? I think because they could see I was enjoying making films, and now I know. The problem is I was quite stereotypical of a deaf person. They're going, right, okay, you're deaf, so you go and you do something visual. And then you lose that connection with that person you think originally was giving you some good advice, but it wasn't the path I wanted to go down, and I was very honest with them the path I wanted to go down. What I needed was somebody to guide me in the right direction. And, because people within the education system are a big influence on you. Maybe they don't know it. I think, for me, again, it doesn't matter what your disability is, what your ethnicity is, what your gender is. There are people who are within the education system who will either motivate you or demotivate you, but give people that opportunity.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. So we'll wrap it up there because of time, but please do hang around afterwards, chat to the panellists, stay for lunch, we've got food that needs eating, and can you please give a big round of applause again for Rabia and Saskia, thank you.